Sorry, we don't have time for a break. It's time for our next guest. Please join me in welcoming to the stage the CEO of Human Longevity, Dr. Wei-Wu He.
Okay. This is
Yeah, it should work.
oh great. Yeah, that's great. Okay, let's make it interactive. Okay. How many people in this room thinks that you're gonna live over 100? Raise your hand. Man, this room is good. Okay. So I think last year I was here, there's fewer hands. Okay, I hope after I think I have 30 minutes, right? 30 minutes, there's a few more hands. Okay. Um, you know, I'm going to just tell a few stories, okay, about longevity because, you know, most people probably don't believe me that I have been interested in longevity for more than 50 years. Okay, so I'm 38, or so it cannot be true, right? So, and I will always tell this story, and this is the energy actually still keeping me going. As when I was about 6 years old, I actually grew up with my grandmother, and my grandmother is like the most loving human being I can recall in my brain. Unfortunately, she had a bleeding. She went to the hospital and never came back. And she died at age 63 of late stage cervical cancer. And I look at back my entire career, probably my grandmother had a huge amount of impact. So I went to college, studied biochemistry, although I really did well in math and physics, but I never really went to learn math and physics. I went to study biochemistry. And eventually I followed with a longevity scientist in China, Dr. Zheng Ji. He lived to 110. Okay, he wrote the first textbook. He was trained in the US, went back to China in the 1930s, and wrote the first textbook of biochemistry in China. And he also studies nutrition, biology, and longevity science. Actually, in the 1960s, he already proposed a theory that in order to live long, you have to have metabolic balance. Okay, so right now we all know, obesity and type 2 diabetes is really ruining our body. So when I was his last graduate student in 1985, and he brags to all our students that he is going to live over 100. He lived to 110. Okay, so he's my perfect N-of-1 longevity study sample. And then he's obviously the one encouraged me to come to the US to study because in the 1980s, nobody does research in China. And so I was lucky enough to get a fellowship, came to US to do my PhD. And make a long story short, I always like to go to the greatest institution, Mayo Clinic, Mass General. But luckily, in 1993, I bumped into this, phenomenal scientist, Craig Venter, and he was starting out the first large-scale DNA sequencing company called Human Genome Sciences. I was literally the first scientist that Craig convinced me to leave Mass General and joined Human Genome Sciences. That's really the beginning of the genome sequencing project. So today, that's my story. Okay, so I will tell you a story that I'm going to work on longevity for next 40 years. Okay, so I'm not giving up. Okay, uh, so I'm going to share with you why today you have a significant chance of living over 100. Okay, the reason is very simple. Longevity is a science and technology innovation. We human being has lived on Earth for millions of years, but until 1900, our average life expectancy is around 30 years old. Okay, I don't care whether you have friends over there or you have mental health and all that, but we die around 30 years old. Okay, and so ever since 1900, we have a lot of technology innovation, and mainly because of dealing with infectious disease. Do you guys know that actually smallpox killed 500 million people in about 40, 50 years before the vaccine, before all that? But today, the curve is growing. And so you asking me, is this curve plateaued? We're stuck around 80 years of age of longevity. I can tell you my opinion is absolutely not. Okay, I think you will see average life expectancy of 100, probably even in our lifetime. Okay, and I'll share with you why why it is. I'm going to tell you another story. This story that I actually, resonated with me while I'm, running this company called Human Longevity is, although technology, is already here, but sometimes take long time for people to adopt it. So the story of Dr. Samuel Weiss is around 1840. He was a gynecologist working at the Vienna General Hospital in Europe. What he observed is that pregnant women, to deliver babies in Vienna General Hospital, in the winter, the death rate is 30%. Okay, can you imagine any lady here, you're about to deliver your son and daughter, you went to the hospital, 30% of you in the winter won't come out alive. Okay, and he was trying to figure out why, because he actually saw people deliver baby at home has a slightly less death rate. So he was observing in the hospital that why in the hospital the death rate is higher. So he was see people going downstairs, cut cadavers, and then they don't even wash their hand. They probably rinse it and they just go walk upstairs, deliver your babies. Okay, and he saw, this is obviously before Louis Pasteur, so the germ theory hasn't been, invented then. He saw there was a demon was brought by the physician upstairs to the lady. So he created a hand washing solution. Okay, for whatever reason, he put chlorine in it. Okay, it's like Clorox. Okay, by simply gynecologists washing their hand, the death rate has dropped below 5%. Even in the winter. Okay, so this is he did this study over and over again, but he couldn't convince a single gynecologist in his hospital to wash their hand. And he gets mad. He will actually yell at the doctor, say, "You guys are murdering women, not by washing hands. Look at my data," right? And they eventually gained on him, and the chairman fired him as a physician. And then he was writing letter to the German Gynecology Society, the British Gynecology Society. And he published this paper, by the way, in 1850 in Lancet. Okay, the paper was published. We human beings didn't understand this paper for another 50 years, 50. Do you know how many women has been killed during that 50 years of physicians don't wash their hand? So this hand washing solution is actually a longevity technology for pregnant women. Okay, because you can have the best friend in the world, you can have perfect methylation clock, you can have perfect telomere length, but if your doctor don't wash your hand, you get killed. Okay, so you don't have longevity. So this is really the story. And eventually he was killed because he was yelling at everybody, and they eventually put, his wife thought he is insane and sent him to insane asylum. And he actually had an argument with a guard in the insane asylum. They hit him with a stick, and a week later, I think he got the septic shock and died. So I'm also a venture capitalist. I always think about what could have Samuel Weiss done differently to get his idea, democratized a little bit faster. So I thought maybe he should just open up his Samuel Weiss clinic in 1850. Okay, so he should knock on a lot of rich people's door and say, I'm going to open a clinic. But my clinic only does one thing: deliver babies, and it's beautiful. It's a 5-star hotel, But I will force my nurse and physicians to wash their hand. If they don't wash their hand, I'll fire them. Okay, so in 2 to 3 years, he will actually have pretty good mortality data out of his clinic. And then he hired a few really good salespeople like Jim Dickey, and walk around the road and see anybody who is pregnant, he will tell them that come to my clinic. Look how beautiful it is. And it's cheaper because I don't do anything else. And my mortality rate is below 3% in the winter. You go to the next hospital, it's 30%. I don't think ladies will be dumb enough to pick a hospital, to deliver baby with a mortality rate of 30%. Now, if he did it 10 years in a row, he should have really good data, right? So so you guys are in a longevity, conference. I've been to, hundreds of longevity conference. I actually think people in these conference are going to get a disease called longevity anxiety, longevity anxiety syndrome. Okay, so because you hear about, Brian Johnson, who used to be one of our board member, you hear about all these people, you have no idea what to do, right? Because in my opinion, longevity has a billion variables. For pregnant women, the physician washing hand is a variable. Okay, if you don't take care of that variable, Brian Johnson's 100 nutraceutical is not going to do you any good. Okay, so there's a billion variables. So which one do you pick, right? To emphasize, that's really the challenge of our time. And I will just share with you what we are trying to do, the human longevity. The other day when I give a talk, a person comes to me and say, you guys are the OG of longevity clinic. So I didn't know what is OG. But then I chat GPT'd it and it says, oh, you're the original gangster. Okay. So, yeah. So, well, our longevity clinic, before everybody started their longevity clinic, Craig is, this visionary, my mentor. And he's the first one decode the first human genome. And but he started the company actually with Peter DeMontis, and now Peter has its own clinic, which I think we helped you guys build the first clinic in Florida. Craig is actually a visionary, so he's amazing as a scientist. This is all public in his books and everything. He has a genetic trait called phantasia. Okay, people who have phantasia are very, very good scientists because when they close their eye, they claim they can envision the world 20, 30 years from now. So when he envisioned he can decode the genome much cheaper than the US government, he did it. He made the first microbiome. I don't know if you guys know, a synthetic bacteria, which the DNA in there is 100% synthesized chemically. He was also involved the first, xenotransplant, the pig heart, going to the Baltimore. The person lived 2 months. That's actually they worked on it for 15 years. Right now, he's working on a project which will make a synthetic microbiome. It's 100% synthetic. Even the shell, the lipid, is synthesized. So he has, so he basically envisioned after genome is sequenced, there's the next chapter of the genome. Now, I want to explain to you why genome is so important. We human beings come to this earth not because the day you are born. It's because the day that your mother's 3 billion code fused with your father's 3 billion code. That's our basic software of our cell. We all came to this world with one single cell, as a one single cell. Just 9 months later, you become 9 pounds, but that single cell become, 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 4. All the DNA in that single cell determines a lot, of your life, okay? If you happen to have a dog genome, the dog never lived beyond 30 years old. The Guinness record for a dog is 29 years and 5 months, if I believe correctly. So there's no history of a dog can live over, 100. But then you have bald-headed shark whale can actually live 200 to 300 years. Elephant never get cancer. Very rarely you will find elephant have cancer because they have a cancer protecting gene called P53. They have 20 copies of it. We human being only has 2 copies. And some people are born with 1 copy. Those people, really are prone to cancer. So basically that's Craig's vision. How do we actually, after genome, can we really deliver extra 10, 20 years of healthy life to everybody, to 8 billion people? And I was I went to see Craig in 2015, because I just sold a company. I actually think one of the things for longevity is after age 60, you need to find a job which you're willing to work for free. Okay, so after I sold my company, I was kind of looking for a job that I'm willing to work for free. So in 2015, I went to see my mentor, Craig, and he said, this is what I want to do. I said, I'm addicted to longevity. So I actually wrote a check for $40 million, I think in his office, or agreed in his office. But then a week later, the board wants to fire Craig, after I wrote the check. Uh, so but so far we have launched 3 clinics, because my dream is before I die, some of the technology will be adopted to 1 billion people. So we actually opened up a clinic in China because the US doesn't even have 1 billion people. So, I was just in Southeast Asia because Asia has about 4.some billion people. So if you really want to achieve 1 billion people adaptation, that actually you can't just stay in North America, okay? And we launched a 100+ program, and we realized that we can't do it alone. So I approached Mass General, and surprisingly, all the top leadership of Mass General says, I 100% agree with what you guys are doing, but we can't do it at Mass General because the CEO David Brown actually said, if he wanted a whole body MI in Mass General, he has to go visit 5 doctors because there's no CPT code for a whole body MRI inside Mass General. Okay, so he has literally have to complain headache, chest pain, back pain. Then he will get 5 orders. He has to go visit 5 times to get a whole body MRI done. So I asked David, why actually he wants to team up with Human Longevity. He said actually he wants to use our platform to teach the new resident at the Mass General and all that. So I'll make. This slide has been shown a lot. When Craig decoded the first human genome, the U.S. government spent about $3 billion, and Craig Solera spent a little bit over $100 million. This is 25 years ago, but the cost has been dropping significantly. Now you can decode your genome for less than, I think our cost is still about $1,000 because we are a clear cap clinical grade genome. But if you just want to decode your genome, there's a $100 genome. And you only kind of need to do it once in your lifetime. So it's $1. If you live 100 years, it's $1 a year. I always say, don't eat 1 McDonald's, and you will be able a year, and you'll be healthier. Okay, and you can decode your genome. But so what is our current Semmelweis clinic? Because Semmelweis clinic cannot do everything. For him, it's all about gynecologists washing hands. So the women went to go baby delivery, doesn't have to die of a childbirth fever, right? So, but what should we do? There's a lot of things we talk about it. I'm telling you, there's 1 billion variables for your longevity, okay? And I'm sure 1,000 years ago, occasionally there will be people living over 100. And you go talk to him, he will tell you 1 million reasons why he lived to. The best one I heard is this 105-year-old man. People ask him, what's your reason of living to 100? He said, 5 Diet Coke a day. So everybody has the 117-year-old, Maria, the Spanish lady, she's thinking it's 3 yogurt a day. Okay, so everybody has their reason. So I'm actually going to talk about the low-hanging fruit, so the whole genome sequencing, the omics, and all that, and this is a human potential. We all have the potential to live over 100. So Henry Kissinger, this gentleman just died a few months ago. He actually was the oldest marathon runner. He didn't start to run marathon until he's 89 years old. So you guys are all babies, okay? So, but he didn't die of a natural cause. He lived in London, but he went back to his Indian village. Everybody told him not to cross that particular intersection. And he did, and he was hit by a car and died at 114. Okay, so, but not everybody is so lucky, even including, in Silicon Valley, we all know Steve Jobs, we know actually Susan of YouTube, but, you actually die pretty young. The Black Panther, actor died of colon cancer at 43, and his brother now is also confirmed with early stage colon cancer. So their family, my guess is, carries a genetic, a genetic risk for colon cancer, which we all know there's a Lynch syndrome, which if you carry the Lynch syndrome gene, you really need to do colonoscopy, probably when you're 30, 35 years old, or Cologuard. But the US medical guidelines is 45 years old to do. So you can't believe in guideline. Guideline is statistics. But for people who has Lynch syndrome, they need to, don't forget about the guideline, because your body is different. You need to actually do Cologuard much early in your life. We can talk a lot about, immortality and all these technology may not happen in another 10, 20, 30 years. Because in the last 200 years, I believe, antibiotics, vaccine really actually moved the average life expectancy towards, 70, 80, and, a lot of innovation. I actually think in next 20 years, the biggest low-hanging fruit is still don't die of stupid diseases, okay? Because do you guys know 3 million people die in the US every year, okay? And 2 diseases kills half of them. Cardiovascular and cancer kills about 1.5 million people. Okay, so if you just deal with 2 diseases, cardiovascular and cancer, you already prevented 50% of the deaths or delayed 50% of the death. But if you add the top 4 diseases, it kills about 70 to 80% of Americans every year. If you added top 10 diseases, actually pretty much 90-some% is killed by the top 10 diseases of our time. So we don't die of old age. Oh, if you die of old age, you should be like my mentor, live to about 110. That's called die of old age. We don't die of old age. We die of a pancreatic cancer. We die of a stroke. We die of I personally think the lowest hanging fruit in our lifetime is don't die of those diseases. And this is, our science. We publish a lot, so, actually, I'm glad that, this is a longevity clinic we're trying to build. We actually, 12 years ago, probably nobody talks about building longevity clinic, but we're actually now seeing, I predicted there will be 50,000 of them were coming along, we in different format. Okay, so, and we're happy people copying us. Okay, don't get me wrong. The more you copy, if you are willing to lose $600 million with me, that's great. Okay, so so that's how much we have spent in the last 12 years. So we published a lot of papers. So we were ranked by Nature as a top 30 publishers. I calculated Craig spends about $10 million to publish a paper. Okay, so and I actually think our Samuel Wise paper is this particular one. It's also by Dr. Tom Kasky, my mentor at Baylor, and also he's the former head of R&D of Merck. So the conclusion of this paper is when we had an initial 1,200 clients coming in, this is published about 5 years ago, they all have to declare they're healthy. But when you use modern technology, whole genome sequencing, whole body MRI, metabolome, proteome, all that, it turned out to be about 14% of them, they better go see a doctor in the next month, okay? Because they have a 2-centimeter tumor in their body, or they have a huge brain aneurysm in their brain, or their coronary artery is already 70, 80% blocked, okay? So that's the 14%. Now, obviously, our cohort is average age is about, I think it's in this cohort is about 56, 53 years old. Now, if you did this cohort a little bit younger, the data would be different, okay? But then another 40% of people has significant risk that for age-related chronic diseases. You are ApoE4 homozygous, and you're diabetic, and you already have, hippocampal volume is already shrinking. So that actually we know you're probably very prone to dementia. So this is the conclusion. And so far now, we have more than 10,000 people. We have about a few thousand in China now. This data, believe it or not, that still holds true. So this is, over the last 10 years and over 10,000 cohort. And it's actually looks like, even the Caucasian population, the Asian population kind of holds true to this thesis. And the interesting thing is most of these findings is preventable, is actionable. Okay, it's not, we build clinic because, I think longevity clinic has two ways to build it. One is you build the Rolls Royce, or the Porsche 911. The other is you build a Honda Civic first, so that you will see a lot of clinic, start with 199 or 399. And those are the Honda Civic, going upstream. We are the Rolls Royce going downstream because we need the data. We need the comprehensive data to actually really do, this is my 4 pillar of longevity care. One is, I still think today the lowest hanging fruit is just don't die of the top maybe 10 diseases. Your likelihood of living extra 10, 20 years is much higher. If Steve Jobs didn't die of pancreatic cancer, he probably would be alive at 70 or 80. So, okay, so because his longevity medicine is not taking 100 pills or, he need to get rid of his pancreatic cancer. And then lifestyle is important. I think my mentor lived to 110. He probably wrote the best book on, lifestyle medicine, and he lived. He's disciplined enough to live to 110 for that. And mental health is, I always like the punchline of Peter Attia say, if you're not happy, why do you want to live long? So, and high social connectivity is important. I think, the longevity ecosystem itself is actually a high quality social network. I'm really grateful that Nick organized this wonderful meeting, and I'm probably going to be here for the next 50 years. So yeah. Oh, I only have 2 minutes. Okay, let me see if I can. This is, the tip, we think right now only 4 out of 100 people live over 100. We think actually genomically, 80% of you has the ability to, Charlie Munger is my idol, so unfortunately, Charlie Munger died in his sleep at the 99 because there's one place that he has to go, which is sleep, okay? So, but these are the top diseases kills you right now. Now, by integrating genomics, imaging, and liquid biopsy, I'll just quickly go why we think we have a cure for cancer now. So we actually just put out $1 million guarantee for our members for the 5 cancers already. Now, we don't make that guarantee unless we actually have certain number in our clinic that we know that you won't die of cancer. The reason is, if you look at prostate cancer, if you discover prostate cancer at stage 1, it's 100% curable. But if you discover your prostate cancer at stage 4, only 30% of people can survive 5 years. 70% people will die within 5 years. Same is for breast cancer. At the stage 1 is 100% curable. At the stage 4, only 28% can survive 5 years. So the key is, don't worry about all the wonderful drug and everything, but those are designed for this stage. What you really want is make sure you never get beyond stage 1. And so the question is, how do we do it? I'm not gonna. So for Angelina Jolie, she's my hero because she's willing to talk about her BRCA1 mutation. Because for people, Angelina Jolie, the number 1 goal to live over 100 is to deal with her breast cancer and ovarian cancer risk. If she doesn't deal with her breast cancer and ovarian cancer risk, she can have the best recipe from Brian Johnson, methylation clock, telomere clock, doesn't matter because her mother died at 58. Her whole family, on the female side, died around 60 years old because of this mutation. So we actually do this, obviously, and the imaging is getting better and better. I'm just going to jump into, our AI algorithms. This is our client. I can talk about him. We have a few Nobel Prize laureate. Hinton is one. And as a matter of fact, the day he got his Nobel Prize, if you listen to his phone call, he said, I'm waiting to do my whole body MI in HRI, but I guess I have to cancel it because, okay, and I'll just make a very quick, we are working on the prostate cancer model. Make a long story short, by using genetics, protein marker, imaging, we can predict prostate cancer 100% before stage 2. So nobody should die in our clinic with a prostate cancer. This is why we actually come up with $1 million pledge for our member. So if we ever missed your stage 4 prostate cancer, we will commit $1 million to take you to, to the best, So I think I have 1 minute, half a minute. So this is actually Alzheimer's disease model. So, okay, this is I will just put the last slide is, we think in the future, 8 billion people should have 8 unique algorithms. For Angelina Jolie, there need to be an algorithm for Angelina Jolie. For me, there's an algorithm for me. So I'm going to ask you, how many of you now are convinced you can live over 100? A few more hands. Thank you so much. Yeah.